Hi, everybody. I am Misty McBrierty, your new math coach, district-wide math coach. And I just wanted to do this quick introductory video just to give you a little heads up about me, my background, what I believe, value, and how I see my role here in Waterboro as this instructional math coach, which is a new role for me in my career. And I'm really excited both about the role as well as the an opportunity to work here in Waterboro, which is in my backyard. I live in North Berwick, Maine, and have been a Mainer my whole life. Grew up in Moosehead, on Moosehead Lake, Greenville, Maine. Went to college here in all my degrees in Maine. I've been in this career path since I graduated from University of Maine, Farmington in teaching back in 1996. So I'm starting to feel my age a bit. I have been a math and science teacher. That's what I did before I went into being a building principal of a fourth grade school. And I taught at a public charter school in Massachusetts. And then for the last 9 years, I've been a director of curriculum in schools in New Hampshire. So I'm really excited to be back to the way life should be here in Maine. And you'll notice my background, Zoom background, which is one of my favorites. This is a picture of a family rafting trip in 2019 down the Penobscot. And I love to use this background because it just reminds me about how we, it's a great analogy for our field of education because we have to brave the wilderness, and often we are smooth sailing and have that great crew culture, and other times we're hitting the rapids and things are crazy and unpredictable, and we have to be able to work together to get down that river successfully and hopefully having had a blast doing it. So I love to use this background, and it really is kind of an analogy for how I see the world, how I see myself as a person and as an educator, a colleague, a teacher, a friend, mentor, coach, right? So, and so I really wanted to kind of share that. And, I see this role as district math coach, though it is math, and I love math and science. I do kind of want to give you my learning background, my learning experiences, or my learning story. I got into teaching because I didn't have a good school experience. I came from affluent family, great family with resources and lots of supports, but my school experience was not good, especially in mathematics. And I loved science all through school. I really loved science, and I could show my math understanding much better there. Often I was passing science classes, but with flying colors, but I was really struggling to pass my math classes. So I, started at a very early age having significant math anxiety. A joke in my family was that I was only good at math 6 months out of the year when my dad was home. He's an engineer, and he was a merchant marine, so he was home 3 months and then at work 3 months. So that was kind of our joke. And I really, it was never about me not being able to understand the concepts of mathematics. It was really, my experiences, the conditions I was in, and my lack of confidence in my ability to do mathematics. And it took me a very long time into my adulthood to realize that my math anxiety and my lack of ability to seem to master those concepts was not a genetic problem. It was an instruction problem and a confidence problem. And so when I went into teaching, I obviously went in really with my goal to be a science teacher, which has always been my passion. I've been a nature girl from a very young age. And it still is a huge passion. And one of the things that I think I bring to the table is allowing people to be able to see ways in which mathematics is everywhere. And I always tell people that I'm very spiritual, not churchy, but I am positive that the divine intelligence speaks in the language of mathematics. And it is the language of the universe, and it is everywhere, and everybody connects to mathematics in some way. And I always have had a goal as a teacher that I wanted our young people, especially starting in elementary school through middle school and high school, to stay loving the mathematics content area and to see it as something that's very valuable to their lives, both their personal and professional lives. And often what's happening, and the research is really clear about this, that in lots of content areas, but especially in mathematics, and especially for kids in minority populations and girls. By the time they're in 3rd or 4th grade, they start to really not see mathematics as something that is, in their wheelhouse. And often you hear kids say, it's not, my mother wasn't good at mathematics. I'm not good at mathematics. I'm never going to be good at math. And again, it's not a genetic problem. It's an instruction and confidence problem. And so one of the things I think I bring to the table as a math coach, as a coach of any learning, but certainly since my role is mathematics here, that I, have that background of really understanding learning theory and motivation, and my personal experience of not having good luck and good experiences with mathematics, that I can bring to the table that openness and vulnerability to say, hey, I'm going to sit beside you. We're going to figure this out. Often we as teachers, if mathematics was not something we felt comfortable with, we struggle with that as teachers, and we're not vulnerable because we feel like we have to be right, even though there's times in which we don't know how to do something. And we think we should because we've become a teacher, but we can't be masters of everything, right? So I just feel that I could bring that to you. My big goal is to build lots of good relationships with everyone across the district, and be there as someone that you feel very comfortable being vulnerable with, and problem solving around what you need as a professional, as a person. When you're struggling with reaching your students, being able to sit beside you and problem solve and figure out what we can do to make things better and get our kids back on track. And one of my big goals, like I said, is to, be able to keep our kids excited and engaged and hopeful about mathematics. It really helps our kids be thinkers. And a lot of the things we do in mathematics is really real life applicable, but that we, keep their hope, and we get more and more kids who feel confident about sticking with math. And I will tell you, my high school experience was really hard. Upper middle school and high school was probably the hardest, though in elementary school, I was shoving my math worksheets into hollow logs. And though I was not a very smart criminal at 7, 8 years old and put my name on it, it was a struggle for my teachers to get me to sit and do those. But by middle school and high school, I really had lots of achievement gaps. And it wasn't till my senior year in high school when I had this amazing guy who taught trigonometry. My father forced me to take my 4th year of math. And it was a trigonometry class because I certainly hadn't learned the skills to really jump into pre-calculus, which is what my father really wanted me to do, because he saw that my potential. But his name was Gary Larson, which is so funny because I love The Far Side, but everything in his room was The Far Side. And but he was so kind and empathetic, and I think he had sort of made a specialty of those of us who didn't have confidence. And I never walked into that room. And it was the first time, honestly, in middle and high school, that I'd had a feeling of it's okay not to know, and that I'm the teacher who's going to help you to get this, right? And it was just a really profound experience for me. And it was one of the things leaving high school that was profound enough for me to say, yep, I've made a good decision about going into education and helping kids to really love math and science. So that story stays with me. It stayed with me through all my learning, through college and graduate school, and now teaching graduate school myself. And, that to me is the thing that I think I bring most to the table for all of you, is that you will never see me sit beside you and do anything, that consciously that would make you feel that you're not enough. I love Brene Brown's work. And if you haven't delved into much of her work, she certainly can get you through some tough times, especially through these times of pandemic and aftermath of pandemic. And her book, The Brave the Wilderness, is kind of where I get that coined phrase for this, because that's what we're doing in education. We're just braving the wilderness. And we're right in the midst of the wilderness right now still, with this pandemic and all the things that are still swimming around in our lives around it. But I love her quote where she talks about in this wonderful TED talk she does on vulnerability, which I've attached it near this video as well. If you haven't watched that, I strongly suggest you do. But one of the things she talks about is how everybody talks about the things that we can quantify in the world, right? And that we quantify everything. And in education, we collect data. We have tons of quantitative data, and we keep collecting it. I'm not sure we're always doing the greatest things with it, but we collect a lot of it. And so often we give kids, families, each other the sense that the only thing that matters is what can be measured quantitatively. And I love her phrase that, because she's a qualitative researcher, and that's sort of the vein I chose in my doctoral work, is qualitative research, because it wasn't my strength. And she calls that the data with a soul. And I love that, because there was another researcher, and I'm drawing a blank on his name at the moment, but there was something he said that I thought, wow, beautifully said. And he said, you know, our lives are not quantitative experiences. Our lives are qualitative experiences. It's not about what we can measure. It is about how thick our lives are, how meaningful our lives are. Do we find the purpose that we are really supposed to be living into, right? And I think mathematics is a language for that. And we have great things that we do and important things that we do in the quantitative realm. But I challenge you to really look at all those qualitative things that we also need to measure that actually are the gatekeepers into the cognitive mind. And if we don't really focus in on those things, then we are losing everybody's hope. We chip into people's souls, and it's not what we want, right? And I think we have to remember, and I think lots of us do, but the pressures that are outside of us often chip away at our souls around knowing that we're teaching a whole child. And our goal when they graduate is to have kids love learning, have the basic foundational things they need in order to do anything they decide to do in their lives, and that we've been an integral part of helping them figure out their passions and purpose. And, you know, for me, my passions and purpose was math and science. And I think, you know, I'd love to see more people wanting to go into those types of fields for sure. But keeping our kids loving learning and loving, you know, being curious and creative. Our little 4 or 5 year olds that come into school and they enter, they're so curious no matter where they come from. They're not afraid to fail. You know, they're curious, they're engaged, they, you know, persevere, and they love to learn. They love their teachers. And then about 3rd or 4th, 5th grade, they just start really shifting. And they lose that drive for learning and start to really pay attention to outside of themselves, how to comply, how to do what the teacher wants. And they stop really seeing learning as the goal for what school is about, both their academic and their social emotional learning. So that is truly a passion of mine. So you should know that going in, working with me, that I'm, you know, I certainly have lots of knowledge from my experience and expertise, but in a coaching model, if it's really going to work, it means that we're going to learn from each other. And I know for sure that I will learn from all of you, and I will be very curious and asking you all lots of questions. I certainly have ideas I can bring to the table, but I see myself as facilitating, you know, all of each other's learning and to problem solve with you and to really support you to be the best self that you want to be and rock stars in our field of education in learning. So I look forward to building lots of good relationships with all of you that I get to know and I'm working with directly, large districts and lots of schools. So give me lots of grace as I figure all this out coming into this new district. But I will tell you that my experience so far has been very good, and everyone has been so welcoming and wonderful and kind and empathetic. And so I look forward to all of my experiences with all of you, and helping all of our young, magnificent math minds keep those minds excited and engaged and sticking with what I think is the language of the gods. So have a wonderful start of your school year, and you'll see more videos from me around resources that I'm creating, and Google Classrooms and websites and things like that. But again, thanks so much for welcoming me here to this district, and I look forward to working with all of you.